Well, Happy New Year, sir.
Happy New Year, man. We are back. Episode
Episode
50.
50.
Woo!
50. Can you believe that already? Well, we
It's
got
on
a
the road,
special guest
man.
to introduce in a minute. We got Frank Manzo from Wrestle Reaction and the Living the Gimmick podcast family. We are very excited to have him on. So let's get the show started with some music first, why don't we?
Agility from the champion. Oh, deep six! That could be it. Delivers this deep six.
Good evening, Deep Six Pro Wrestling Podcast fans. Happy New Year to you all.
Episode 50, man. Here we are. It feels like it's been a while.
Yes, 50 episodes. We are moving on up. Special episode, milestone episode. We have a special guest, Frank Manzo from Wrestle Reaction and Living the Gimmick podcast family. Before I introduce him, he ran Wrestle Reaction for 6 years. 6 years, every single Monday night, night in, night out. I personally don't know how he did it. This is a lot of work that we do here, and very commendable. I've been a big fan of him for ever since I met him. Big fan of him on and off the screen, and it's definitely an honor to have him with us today. Let's bring him on right now.
Woo! Man, we are excited. Episode 50. It's been a while since, everything going on with, the holidays and New Year's, but man, we're back. It's good to be here, man. I'm excited.
I hit the wrong button. Tommy, thank you so much for carrying that.
Of course,
okay,
man.
Let's bring him on. Without further ado, Frank Manzo from Wrestle Reaction, Living the Gimmick podcast family. Let's go.
Good.
How you doing, Frank?
Gentlemen, I am happy to be back on the air after a long time. Yes, and Wayne, by the way, you bastard, that was 7 years, not 6. Okay, don't dare take a year off my legacy. Listen, I just want to say hi to everybody who's watching this. Maybe you've watched me before. Maybe you're new to the family and you guys have been loyal to Wayne and Tommy over here, which do a great job. And Wayne's one of my favorite people I've ever met through doing my show. So I'm happy to be on here, happy to be talking all things wrestling and other. We've got a big NFL weekend. And, a lot of you would probably hear a lot more from me if the pandemic had not happened and in my opinion, really hurt professional wrestling. I think Sports Illustrated actually said today they felt that it was the sport that was impacted the most with the audience removal and everything that happened out of every professional sport that there is, sports entertainment, whatever you want to call it. So it's been a little rough. My plan was always to go back to doing a monthly show covering the pay-per-view and such like that. But this year we did cover Rumble. We did cover WrestleMania. We did SummerSlam. Survivor Series just honestly wasn't worth my time. But as my partner always said, hashtag get me to the Rumble. It is January, boys. I mean, it's playoffs. It's the Rumble. I mean, this is it. We've got a lot to talk about, and I'm super excited on a Friday night to be on here with you boys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for hopping on. We're going to jump right into it, but we're going to get the Debbie Downer stuff out of the way first because this is our first show of the year, first show since the holidays. We took a little time off. And we have not addressed Brodie Lee.
Oh,
I'm sitting in a restaurant, and Frank, everything's shut down in the city. You can't even eat in a restaurant. And I'm hanging out, going to see the Christmas tree. Had to drive to Jersey just to dine in because we needed to backtrack to get to Brooklyn. So where the hell are we gonna eat? So I'm sitting there on my phone, 9:00, and then I see the alerts. My messages blew up about Brodie Lee passing. Kind of came out of left field.
Shocking.
Yeah.
I think that's the best word that you can put. I remember I was sitting at home, Christmas. My older brother had come home from, working out in Kansas, and it's just weird, man. You get that instant reaction. You're like, this can't be real. Brodie Lee's passing. He's such a huge part of AEW's roster, just a huge part of the entire wrestling community. And I think that showed when they did the tribute show, For one night, the entire wrestling community just shut down and came together as a group. And it was It was special, man. It showed the kind of man that Brodie Lee was. John Huber was. It was a perfect night.
I have not watched the show yet, and for a few reasons. I have been a little behind on wrestling. I have not been watching a lot of the shows live. I've kind of enjoyed skipping through the commercials on DVR, catching up at a different time, not having to hold myself hostage to watch 3 hours of Raw, which is not worth it most of the time. This is horrible. There have been all different kinds of reports of what happened. No matter what it is, it's a tragedy. I was very, and I'm going to tell you why. I was very perplexed as to, and full disclosure here, I'm not stating anything happened other than what his wife said. I'm just going to tell you my perspective because, we all have a little inside information because of what we do. I'm sitting on the couch with the wife, and all of a sudden I see that he's dead. And now go back to somebody I know that has some pretty good sources backstage in these companies. And the rumor had been that he possibly may have been away and taken off screen when he lost the title to Cody for some kind of alcohol issue. At that point, I'm like, did this guy drink himself to death? Did he overdose? And then you find out about the whole double lung failure, basically, which just is insane. And I've been through some vascular surgeries in my life, which actually got involved with some pulmonary issues. So this is kind of very close to home for me. And I've dealt with a lot of pulmonologists and specialists. I don't think it has anything to do with an alcohol or substance abuse issue or anything like that. I think it's straight up what she said. What caused it? I mean, the man could have had a pulmonary embolism of some kind that could have been in the making. We will not know. They may never release it. We don't need to know. It's a tragedy. So I'm just very confused at first. Like, how does that happen? Obviously, he was in peak physical shape wrestling for the AEW TNT title, put on an amazing show with Cody with the dog collar match. And it's just, you get that. You can't even react emotionally right away because you're just confused as to what the hell just happened. And, the week they did the tribute show on AEW, I've seen most of the main clips. It was beautiful what they did for that family. The booking of that show was amazing. Some people called it the best wrestling show of the year. I'll give my thoughts on that when I watch it pretty soon. But I'm about 2 weeks behind on AEW, and that week was just a little bit of an emotional week for my family and a couple of things that we had to go through also, and I just couldn't take any more. So it's kind of, sometimes in these situations, I kind of sit back in life and I say, the masses were all crying and celebrating together, and sometimes you as yourself, you kind of get lost in that big crowd. So it's actually going to be unique for me later to go back and watch it probably this week on my own, have everybody having experienced it already. And I'm sure I'm going to lose it because, I'm very emotional to things like that. And the man was just, in our time watching wrestling, and I know I spoke to Tommy before, and he said he's been, already in for 20 years and longer for me and Wayne. This is one of the most celebrated people that we've ever seen when a wrestler or somebody who worked in the wrestling industry has passed away. I mean, he got as big of a tribute as Pat Patterson did, who was maybe 2 weeks ago. So, and that speaks volumes.
Yeah, I was in a little bit of a shock. I didn't know what to feel, especially when we're coming off a year in 2020 of losing so many people. Whether it be big names, whether it be people that were close to you. And I guess maybe at first I was a little numb to it. Once I started watching the AEW show with the tribute, that's when my emotions kicked in a little bit. So I was definitely a little bit on the ropes there for sure. This came out of nowhere. Very, very unique wrestler with his physique, his character, his mannerisms in the ring. I don't think we've seen anybody like this within the last 20 years or so that I know of. I mean, I guess you can go back to the other guy, the other Brodie, Bruiser Brodie.
Bruiser Brodie, yeah. I mean, he just brought something different. I mean, you said it best. It's hard to put into words just how he was. I mean, you look at, if you're a fan of Being the Elite, the YouTube series, he's just a comedic character, but also the leader of the Dark Order. And he's still kind of that tough guy, but he's also kind of, you can see that comedic side. And then when you get in the ring, he is balls to the wall, beating the hell out of Cody Rhodes. You know, we see that in the dog collar match, and even in the first TNT title match, we see it when he was with the Wyatt family in WWE. He just brought something different to the WWE and to AEW and I think that's what made it so much more special, was the fact that it wasn't just the AEW family, it wasn't just the WWE family, it was both communities just coming together, man. I mean, everybody was just, for one night, put everything aside and said, let's be wrestling fans. It wasn't about the ratings, it wasn't about the demographics, it was just about, let's be fans and let's celebrate this man. I think AEW handled that tribute so well. I mean, you know, like you said, Frank, you haven't seen the tribute, but I highly recommend it to anybody who hasn't seen it. It was just a perfect tribute, man. I mean, it made me tear up, man. Honestly, like, it was just such a wholesome show. You could see it from the people. Yeah, exactly.
A lot of the keyboard warriors out there were complaining how John Huber didn't get a big tribute on the WWE side. I mean, WWE did honor him in all three of the shows by showing the picture of the year in all three of their episodes last week. I kind of felt that it's a little bit more AEW's territory to do the tribute, to do the full package, to have the wrestlers on the stage. After all, he's part of the AEW family.
I agree. I think some people thought it was insulting what WWE did, but I think WWE actually seemed to step aside and let the company that was celebrating him, that he was there with, do the big show for him that they did. I thought they were very respectful with all the nice tribute videos they put up online, and obviously the in-memory photo that they put up at the beginning of every show. You know, what's great about this, if we can get anything great out of this, is that, you know, he was a guy that a lot of people felt was held down in WWE, and we saw a lot of great moments from him even there.
Yeah.
But in AEW, his legacy will be that he had an amazing run. It may have been very short, but everything we saw of him was of a big-time player that was going to be a big-time player in that company. Whether or not it would have been a long-standing world champion or not doesn't matter. You don't always need to be that guy. You could be one of these guys that has a monster career that's always in the fight for that upper mid card always, or lower upper card, or even the highest upper card. I mean, just, he would have been all around performing, you know, whether or not it was the vignettes or the promos or the great matches he had. I mean, he's one of the most athletic big men, taller people that we've seen in a very, very long time. It's just,
I was looking at some of his matches. I was going to put you guys on the spot and ask your favorite moments, but I won't do that. But
I'll give you mine.
But I was, how about the Shields, the Wyatt versus
the Shield versus
Shield?
Wyatt Elimination Chamber.
Shield versus
2014.
Wyatt is my
Fantastic.
go-to. Yeah.
WrestleMania 31, even though he lost in that match, WrestleMania 31 ladder match to open up that WrestleMania. It arguably probably one of the best WrestleManias since WrestleMania 17.
I love that.
What a good opening match. And Brodie, John Huber, Luke Harper then was shining in that match quite a bit. And then his AEW stuff has been spectacular.
Wayne, it's even the stuff that is not going to come to your mind as a big event that stands out, that his work was just so good. Like, I remember summer of 14, before I got married, we went to Boston for my bachelor weekend, and the year before we did a Red Sox game for my other friend who was getting married, and that year we did Money in the Bank. It was the Sunday pay-per-view. We went up there for the weekend. It was awesome.
Oh, I was at that one.
Yeah, it was a great show, and I'll never forget what opened the show. And I had a couple of guys with me that maybe used to watch wrestling and hadn't really kept up, and dude, him and Rowan versus the Usos tore the house down to open up the show. And it's like, you know, nobody ever remembers that. It's not like a WrestleMania moment where it's like, oh, let's go back to that. But I remember it because I was there, and I'm with like probably 3 people that haven't watched wrestling in a good 5 years or so. And they're like, damn, I don't know who the hell these guys are, but that was effing awesome. Holy crap. They were just, you know, and I always say the Usos were probably the tag team of the decade, in my opinion. And Harper and Rowan, when they got to work with people like that, it was stellar. I mean, you weren't going to get a bad match from those guys.
And we can't. Luke Harper did great work with the Wyatts. And then they had that short run with the Bludgeon Brothers, so they, they got away from the Wyatt name and go so the Bludgeon. I know Doug McDonald always used to call them the Hammer Bros,
Yep.
but a little bit hokey. But Luke Harper looked excellent physique shape then. Like, you could tell he worked hard to get back into the ring and trying to own the gimmick that WWE was trying to give him.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's, we look at it so much as, the gimmick, the person who's in the ring instead of, the person telling the promos. But we don't look at the person who is, behind the scenes, being a family man, being just a personable person. And we hear all these stories about Luke Harper, John Huber. He was just the kind of person that you wanted to be around, especially during the tribute show. They talked about how he was, smiling for cameras and joking that he bought everybody lunch, and it was just catered, but he was just that kind of guy who was joking, and whenever he could get away from AEW, he'd go straight home to his family. He was the kind of person you wanted to be around. So the life and career of John Huber deserved to be celebrated, and I'm so glad that AEW took that and ran with it. They've made such a great tribute show, and you even brought up the fact that, WWE was kind of put on flack for the fact that they didn't have so much of a tribute, but even they're putting in on the network a playlist of his top moments. They did a best of Luke Harper that's coming out in the next week or so. I think, like I said, and I've mentioned this a few times, but the wrestling community just came together for one great man, and that's the thing that we should all take away from this. This was a great guy who was a even better character in the ring, great wrestler, who just passed away too soon, and it's sad to look at it that way, but man, what a great man that John Huber was.
There hasn't been a time before, and there will not be a time anytime soon, that WWE wrestler social media accounts were allowed to share and retweet AEW company tweets, okay, that had the promos for that episode. I mean, there were literally wrestlers who said, "Watch this tonight," and they were WWE contracted guys. That's not going to happen again anytime soon. It never happened before.
Yeah.
So it really was a coming together of everybody.
Yeah.
Moving on, we're going to talk a little bit of highs and lows. Before we get into our Raw review, we're going to talk a little bit of the highs and lows of 2020. And as far as the wrestling world goes, so Tommy, starting with you, what stood out to you that was good, and what stood out to you that was bad as far as 2020 in either WWE or AEW?
Yeah, something that we've discussed, me and you, Wayne, a lot over the course of this year. I think I joined in, I want to say July or August, but a lot of the pay-per-views for both companies, despite not having a crowd, have been pretty enjoyable. I don't, you have your crap pay-per-view from every now and again, but I feel like every pay-per-view since this pandemic has started has brought us a match that is watchable, rewatchable, or something that has a moment that you remember. You think back to the Boneyard match at WrestleMania. I mean, I remember that was the first pay-per-view of the pandemic era, and it's huge. I mean, WrestleMania is at Raymond James Stadium. They broadcast it, and then they change it to 2 nights. They do the Boneyard match and the Firefly Funhouse. And I remember when the first night, I mean, everybody was picking up the story of just how crazy the Boneyard match was and how this pandemic era was completely different. You have the Money in the Bank match at WWE headquarters. That was just kind of just a bunch of crazy fun. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was something that was enjoyable. You have the Swamp match, I remember. There's just a lot of good pay-per-views this year that I think a lot of people overlooked because of the fact that there was no fans, or because it took place in the Thunderdome. But when I look at the bad, I think the biggest thing that stands out to me is, and I think it's kind of heightened because of the way the New Year's started, is just the lack of pushing new stars. I mean, we have Drew McIntyre, great champion. I love Drew McIntyre. Roman Reigns has done a fantastic job as a heel. You have guys like Aleister Black, Ricochet, Mustafa Ali, who just aren't getting pushed. And I mean, now we're coming to the point where, I mean, Bill Goldberg is coming out on on Raw Legends Night, and he's going to be challenging Drew McIntyre for the title at Royal Rumble. I mean, it just seems like the same old, same old. And I know we're getting into the time where it's Royal Rumble, and this is a time where everybody kind of just sets everything aside and just enjoys wrestling for what it is. But there's just so many stars on both rosters that I think can be pushed so much better. And it just seems like WWE, and even AEW to a fault, are going to the same, Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho, Young Bucks, instead of pushing these new teams that are good, these new tag teams or these new, superstars coming up from NXT. It's just tough, man. I think that's something that is stuck for the last few years. But yeah, just the lack of pushing new stars and bringing new players to the table is something that I think will continue to hurt both companies until they actually do something about it.
I'm going to propose a topic once this topic is done. This is a quick one because he's talking AEW. It just sparked something, and I've wanted to have this debate. So I kind of wanted to bring this to your show, Wayne, on the spot. After we're done with this right now, all three of us are going to name from AEW one person, one performer that we did not know much about and did not see much about before AEW that we absolutely love right now. Okay, now we're going to do that in a second.
Sweet.
Now, 2020, the moment of the year, in my mind immediately, Edge returns at the Royal Rumble. That's my moment.
Great.
I just
great
got
moment.
goosebumps. I just got goosebumps thinking about it. Okay,
Great
just
moment.
friggin' awesome. WrestleMania to me will always be in my mind a disappointment, mainly because they did not figure out yet that you can put a few people in there around the ring like they did later on and make it a much better show. It's very, very, very hard to watch with nobody in the audience. That was the absolute worst time of the year for WWE. It was, I can't even explain how painful some of those shows were.
Oh, the Raws and SmackDowns are bad.
Yes.
Bad.
Now, once they put people behind the barriers and making some noise, even if it was their own NXT staff or trainees that were doing it, I did not give a crap. I need that. It helps everything involved with pro wrestling, okay? WrestleMania will always... I got to tell you, that WrestleMania, I'm not going to go back much in my life and watch it. It's going to be hard. The Boneyard match was absolutely awesome. I am very upset that we got totally effed in the world with everything coronavirus right now, but as far as wrestling goes, that the Undertaker couldn't have his very last match in a full stadium of 80,000 people. That's heartbreaking to me, honestly. The send-off at Survivor Series wasn't anything I liked either, to tell you the truth. The Boneyard match was awesome for what it was, and a lot of people are like, oh, WWE's like too big with their performance and their fireworks and their sports entertainment, and I'm an indie guy and I love flips and gymnasiums. And no, I'm telling you right now, I am a sucker for the big stage and the bright lights and the professionalism and
good storytelling.
Yeah, and the storytelling and everything that made Vince different from the guys in the territories that were doing auditorium shows. You know what I mean? Like, Vince became WrestleMania because it was something so much bigger and it was entertainment. Now, we all know that his company can get ruined all the time by going way too much towards that entertainment. But, I'm a sucker for all of that. I think I totally agree with you, Tommy. As much as weekly TV has been painful to sit through, those pay-per-view shows have been, for the most part, fantastic to sit through almost every time we watched them in 2020. I really liked a lot of them. And a lot of them surprised me. Like, on paper, you're like, oh, it looks like a good card. And then you watch 3 hours, you're like, damn, this is why I love wrestling. You know what I mean? Like, this is great.
Yeah.
And then
I
you
think there was one
the next day and you're like, Jesus, what the hell was that? Like,
exactly.
it's like having one of those dysfunctional relationships where you love her one day and the next day you're like, what the F am I doing? And I'm going to tell you right now, Drew McIntyre, I feel like he's going to be, and I'm not comparing this talent-wise because obviously he's so much better, and I have a great respect for who I'm going to mention, but I just feel like because of coronavirus that Drew McIntyre's run is going to kind of be compared to like a Kevin Nash 95, And that's not fair. And it's not fair to Kevin either, because business was so down and wrestling was such the shits in 95 on both sides of the board that it's nobody's fault. But at the same time, like, people look back at it like, oh, he was the lowest drawing champion of all time. It's like, it's not his fault, dude. You know what I mean? Like, the whole company was trash. Like, I don't watch, none of us have ever watched wrestling to tune into one person. I don't believe that. Nobody can ever tell me that. It'll boost the ratings and bring in some more people. It'll create a bigger audience, but we watch the product as a whole. We like a lot of people on it, okay? So Drew did a great job with everything he did, but my worry is that because of everything that went on in the world and how things changed, I feel like it's just not gonna solidify him the right way. And he had amazing moments. That Royal Rumble match was one of the best Royal Rumbles beginning to end.
He was over.
And what he did putting Lesnar out, ending that little run, and then going on to win it, and then going on to take out Brock at WrestleMania. And I would have loved to see them mix it up a little bit more than they did. I felt, what they did with both those title matches both nights really sucked. It was 5 minutes and done on both of them, big power moves. I would have liked to see him and Brock go. But Drew's great. I hope we get to see him in a normal setting someday. And to close it off, MVPs of the year that honestly saved wrestling for me in 2020, Sasha Banks and Bayley owned the summer. There was just, it was must-see TV every time those girls were on. I mean,
I agree.
No question. And then you want to start with SummerSlam and go to now. Let's talk about the fall. Roman Reigns.
SummerSlam. You're mentioning cards that were like, oh, that looks good. I remember sitting and watching SummerSlam. I was just like, man, this is just really good. I think it was the first match. Montez Ford gets huge height on that diving crossbody or whatever he does. Perfect. I mean, that show was just so good. And then you have Roman come out at the end.
Bro, Dominic
Mysterio
had his very first match and tore the house down with Seth Rollins. When I did the show that night, I was like, I gotta say that I think Dominic versus Seth was my favorite match. Yeah. I mean, it was awesome. It was just great. Up there. I mean, the SummerSlam show just worked. And Sasha and Bayley, man, they just killed it. And then Roman came in and just stole the back quarter of the year, man. He is just on fire. It's everything we ever. The moment, I loved what he did that night, but the moment they turned the camera and showed him and Paul together, I knew we were going to get something so special that was going to pay off for all the years of the booking they gave him. And it just goes to show that, and Wayne, you know this because you listened to me for a long time, that I was right. And most of the people were wrong because they said that he was shit. And I kept telling them, no, the writing is shit. This guy is amazing.
Exactly.
And it just goes to show you that he had it the whole time.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing.
You hung in there for Roman Reigns for a long time.
I think that's the thing is like when you look at, who's good and who's not, it's not the writing, or it's not the wrestlers who are good or not. It's the writing that's bad, man. I mean, look at Clash of Champions was headlined by Jey Uso. Versus Roman Reigns. I remember after the show, we did our post show, and I was like, for the first time in forever, I actually thought, oh my gosh, we might actually have like a random WWE champion show up. I mean, that's the thing is you want to see people defy the odds, and for a second they really made you believe that Jey Uso, a tag team champion for his entire career, could upset, Roman Reigns, could make a case for being a champion. It was so well booked. It was such a good, well-told storyline. Man, you're right. I mean, Roman Reigns was just the epitome of what WWE has done right this year.
And let me just quickly mention that they have done so well with their pay-per-views this year that they managed to put on 3 Hell in a Cell matches in the same show, and every one of them was
good.
Outstanding.
Great.
Match.
Different type of storytelling in each one.
Everyone, yeah.
Yep. Good. But Sasha and Bayley were so good that, when they had the Great American Bash show and Sasha ended up fighting Io Shirai, they made me watch NXT, which I never get a chance to usually. You know what I mean? Like, they literally made me watch something that I normally don't. Like, those girls were just so amazing, and I was very happy to see her on the number 1 for Sports Illustrated this year for Sasha. Bayley played that part amazing too. Let me tell you something, man. I'll tell you. I told you what I got right 2 minutes ago. I'm gonna tell you what I got wrong on Wrestle Reaction. I thought that if they ever tried to turn Bayley heel, it would be the death of her, and she could only be a good guy her whole career. She's been outstanding in this role, and I just I think the women, they've showed year and year that they've been great for probably the past 5 years. But I got to tell you, man, there are times, and this has nothing to do with attraction because there's a lot of beautiful women on that show, but there are times, most of the time I find lately, that I find the women's segments and matches to be some of my favorite things on all of WWE.
True.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think
Sasha and Bayley were the most intriguing storyline all summer in all WWE.
Yep.
And it's funny you brought up the Hell in a Cell. I remember me and Wayne talking on the pre-show. We're like, man, are they really gonna do 3 Hell in a Cell matches? Like you can't overuse the gimmick. And like you said, they were all great in their own way because they all told a completely different story. And again, that's the props to WWE. They've really struggled sometimes on their weekly television, but man, their pay-per-views this year, with the lack of fans or in the Thunderdome, have been, good to excellent. I mean, they've been some fantastic shows this year that I highly recommend if you haven't watched. Go back and check some of their pay-per-views because they are really good this year.
Frank, we're going to get to that little debate. My highs and lows are basically the same as yours between the both of you, pretty much. So there's no need for me to give a spiel on that. So what's your moment of
2020? My
moment of 2020? I would have to say the presentations of AEW was a high, and NXT, because that kind of kept us engaged in wrestling all together. The pay-per-views, NXT 30, Sasha Bayley, Roman Reigns, and then my lows, basically the pandemic, how the wrestlers got affected with the layoffs, and then what else did Pat Patterson, the Fink, Brodie, all within the last couple months. But wrestling's been through a lot. I think AEW and NXT, those both brands kind of saved wrestling a little bit, kept us intrigued. Their presentations were great.
Well, and you know what? Let me quickly mention, my mind went to just thinking 2020 WWE. I wanted to make this point also. It was a great year, a big year, to build the foundation of AEW. They were only, I think October of 2019 was the start. So they were, this was really the first full calendar year for them. And I saw tremendous progress. I saw a product that I do want to watch every week. I saw a roster of guys that some of them, in the beginning, I said, this is just filler. I don't want anybody to be fired, but they don't necessarily, need to have a mid-card spot on TV. They're not ready. And I saw a lot of guys step up and really just put on an overall great show, great roster, great company. I like where it's going. Like Tommy said before, they are reusing some of the top people over and over again. But again, it's a business, and they do want to put the top drawing people out there to get more eyes on the product. I get it. I think they're mixing in people well. I think we're going to continue to see that. So I have to give them big credit. They built a wrestling company that actually is competition viewing for WWE. And I think it's only going to get bigger and better from here. And what they've been able to accomplish being shut down, not being an established company, but being absolutely shut down during a pandemic, during unprecedented times, what we've dealt with now since coronavirus. I mean, Daly's Place alone was just such a breath of fresh air to see that place and how they set it up. I enjoy watching that show every week. And my wife sometimes says, damn, this is so much better to watch most weeks than WWE TV. And she's not wrong. The pay-per-views have all been great, both companies, but they've grown a lot, and I'm more impressed by them than I thought I was going to be at this point. Let me say that.
Oh, so what's this debate? You talked about one guy that you were nobody ever saw.
One guy or girl, one performer that, and not a debate, just I want to know who you think, that before AEW day one, you didn't know much about them. You hadn't seen work a lot. Maybe you saw them a few times. Maybe you never did. But now they are one of your favorite people to watch on AEW.
MJF.
Man, you took my answer. Damn.
He would be up there for me. I'm going to go with Hangman Page. I love the guy.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
He's awesome. And, it resonates with me because he was the first person to challenge with Chris Jericho for the title when they first made the championship. And at that point, I didn't really know much about Page. And I'm saying to myself, man, was this the right move to put someone like him up with Jericho? And I kind of thought at that point they might actually make Page to try to make a new star, because Jericho obviously is the legend he is. And then we gave it to Jericho, and at that point I said, man, I don't know if that was a good move. Maybe they should have made Page. And I'm just watching this guy that I've never really seen before, and just every time he's out there, he's just such a great performer, good-looking guy. He captivates the camera, the audience. You get these spots with him, like when they did the stadium brawl, where they find him drinking at the bar, and then he joins the match. I mean, it's just everything with him.
Character development.
Oh my God! And Wayne, the best part is like I feel some nights they didn't even have to really try much; they just had fun with it. You know what I mean? He's just, to me, he's a star. I love watching his ring work, and I think he's really going places. And I didn't know jack about him before that. So.
And I think that's even the thing is, like, you brought up the Stadium Stampede, which is one of my favorite matches. I know a lot of people are, you either like it or you don't, but he rides in on a horse. I mean, he's chasing after Sammy Guevara. I mean, man, such a great character. And I think my choice is going to have to be Darby Allin, honestly. I had no idea who he was. I grew up in, I was born in 98, so I kind of grew up around the end of ECW, but I was also still living during the end of the Attitude Era, the Ruthless Aggression Era. So I got to see a little bit of the hardcore title and stuff. And man, Darby just has it to me. I think, now what they're doing with Sting, bringing in Sting and, having him around, and we don't know what his motive is, whether he's a mentor or whether, he's going to get in the ring at some point. Darby's just, he's that quiet character that I think you can do so much with. He can go in the ring, he can give you that hardcore style. I mean, we saw, I don't remember who it was, but he got thrown in a body bag full of thumbtacks, and I mean, just got tossed out of the ring. I think it was Lance Archer, maybe.
Yes.
Man, I love Darby Allin. I love that he's a TNT champion, and he's also, he's around my age. I think he might be 4 or 5 years older than me. It's cool to connect with him in that level. But also, man, I just think he can really go in the ring, and I think his character is that young version of Sting, that quiet character that can, he can deliver a promo when he does. We see a lot of the videos that he sends into AEW, but man, I'm really excited to see what they do with Darby Allin in 2021. Whether that's, with Sting or against Sting or against Team Tads or whatever. I'm really excited to see what they do with him.
Right now, he's getting a little bit of that Sting rub.
Yeah, definitely.
Specifically with Darby, that's a guy that I could say the first couple of months watching AEW, I said to myself, like, I don't really get it. Like, I'm not really.
I was the same way with Page, by the way.
He doesn't do it for me. Like, I don't really get it. But like, everybody's like, oh, we like him, and I'm like, okay, I don't hate him, but I just don't get it. And now, like, I saw him tear it up with Cody at the pay-per-view for the title and everything. I had a great match.
Great match.
And I'm just saying to myself, like, all right, like, damn, this kid can work. Like, I'll always respect that. Like, I'll tell you a quick story on the WWE side. Like, personally and on camera, I cannot stand Matt Riddle. Oh my God. But like, the bell rings and it's like, holy crap, this guy can go. You know what I mean?
He
like,
can go. Yeah, exactly.
So we'll see. But I mean, dynamite year for AEW, no pun intended.
Yeah. I think that's another thing is I'm a huge fan of Wayne knows this. I'm a huge fan of Orange Cassidy, but he's also in the same vein. He doesn't have to talk. He reminds me of sort of like an R-Truth. Like, we know that he's a comedy character. Like, he's just in there to put his hands in his pockets and, do the sloth style and everything. But you know what,
Tommy? I hated him for the first couple months of AEW. And you know what it was? Like, I literally thought that they were just going to do that with him. And as soon as he had a real match and took his hands out of his pockets and started working, I was like, okay, now I like this guy. You know what I mean? I was bashing everybody, like, you're going to like the freaking guy with the pockets and the kicks. Like, really? Like, you're going to like that BS? And then, like, once he actually worked the match, I was like, well, shit, this guy can go. Like, okay, now I'm into this.
I think that's the thing is he gets it. He gets his spot on the card. He gets his spot on the roster. But when it's time to go, man, he'll deliver a pay-per-view quality match. He'll deliver a fun match that you can enjoy. But also he'll be that comedic character who is doing the slow kicks and, jumping off, doing the kick up and everything. I don't know. I really love I really love Orange Cassidy. I honestly think he could be a TNT champion later down the line this year.
It's a funny comparison, but with him, I needed to see him mix both. I couldn't just take the gimmick, you know what I mean? And now you're going to laugh who I'm even going to bring up because this is so. But look at Taker. His first couple of years was all gimmick.
It's true, yeah.
It never worked. Never really worked. I mean, the man didn't do a suplex. He did the sit-ups. He did the choke in the corner. He did the roll of the eyes. It was all gimmick. I mean, you got, maybe after a year, him doing the jumping lariat across the ring. And, he says, even when you read Bret Hart's book, and Bret talks about how relieved Taker was to start working with him, be able to actually start working again. You know what I mean? And it's like, that beginning Taker, you never really go back to watch a lot of that because it's just the character. But then he starts mixing the character and the gimmick along with the great ring work, and you get everything meshed together perfectly. And now you've got your solid person.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. That's a good point. I noticed there's a little bit of a transition of the type of in-ring work he did from bridging from 95 into 96 when you worked with Bret Hart Royal Rumble for at least a half an hour, and then you see him work these matches with Mick Foley later on. You see him do a lot more.
And think about who his opponents were before the Bret Hart match. I mean, he was, and he said, I forget where the hell I saw it because he hasn't written a book, but I remember maybe interviews or whatever. And he says, he goes, I was up against guys. I think Bruce mentioned this. He goes, I was up against guys that were I couldn't do anything to them.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm 6'10", I'm strong, but what am I going to do with a Giant Gonzalez? What am I going to do with a Yoko? And he had the best matches with Yoko because Yoko could move and bump for him.
Exactly.
But what are you going to do with Bundy?
King Mabel.
WrestleMania match. Like, everybody who he was facing was so big and so immobile that he was just having these gimmick style matches. You know what I mean? He got to actually get out there and work. It was a totally different story.
And then you bring in a guy with Kane, premiering at Bad Blood. I mean, he's taller than him. I mean, I remember that standoff the first time I saw it as a kid. I was like, man, this is crazy. I was watching Undertaker as the American Badass, and Kane was, taking off his mask at the time.
Yep.
Go back and watch that. And I mean, this is the first time you really see Undertaker just in his element. He's bringing, like you said, he's bringing the lariat, the jumping over the ropes and everything, and just enjoying himself because Kane could work at that pace too. He could work that fast pace, but also big man style. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm excited to see what just AEW in general does. I mean, I put it to Wayne, and I think this is the best way to put it is AEW helped bring wrestling back to the water cooler talk. With what they did with Impact Wrestling and how they brought so many fans to that with Kenny Omega and everything going on. I mean, again, you guys lived during the Attitude Era, so I got to watch it, with glossy eyes, looking from the past. But, man, just to live during that where wrestling was the thing. I mean, signs hold up. You can't even see in the crowds. I mean, everything, it just seems like because as bad as the coronavirus has been, the pandemic has brought wrestling more and more to the outer world because, like we said, WrestleMania was the first major sporting event, that was broadcasted with everything going on. I mean, they were the first event that said, okay, yeah, we're still going to go. We're going to do it. We're going to do 2 nights. Everybody's going to be watching. I mean, with AEW coming in, they're on TNT. They bring in Impact Wrestling and all that stuff. I mean, it's just, I really feel like wrestling is finally getting back to, it's cool being a wrestling fan. Not that I have any problems being a wrestling fan or anything like that, but it's accepted to be a wrestling fan now because it's just everybody's talking about it. There's so much going on and there's so much more to enjoy. I just think it makes the coronavirus has actually made the wrestling product better for the future.
I will say this. I feel like recently in WWE, there's less stuff on the show that I would feel embarrassed about for somebody to watch. Other times you're like, oh, this is so babyish and immature and everything else, And I don't feel that way now. Like, even if you get the Otis stuff on your screen, it's hysterical and he's a great character. You know what I mean? Like, the women are killing it. Roman's a badass heel. Drew McIntyre is a good-looking, jacked son of a bitch who can work. My wife's in love with his chest hair. I have 5 chest hairs. I have a major problem over here. It's just, they're doing a lot right. And it just kills me every day because I'm like, come on. Like, we're going to have a Royal Rumble without fans.
No fans.
Right now? Like, oh, my God. Like, oh.
But you're right. I mean, I even think back, I showed my dad the Boneyard match, and he was like, he's not a wrestling fan, and that's fine, but it's like, he's sitting there watching, he's like, man, this is like an 80s action movie. Like, this is just cool. Like, it's just enjoyable. You got oh, man, that moment when Taker, appears behind AJ Styles, and, what a great moment. But it's just enjoyable. I think you hit the nail on the coffin. It's like, there's so much more things that people who aren't wrestling fans can just sit back and enjoy.
Yeah.
Whether it's the athletic part of it, the storytelling part of it, or just the character part of it. I mean, I think there's just so much more in wrestling now because of the coronavirus that has brought out these characters more.
It's kind of like where we're at right now going into tomorrow with the start of NFL football playoffs. Like, you could watch the whole season and it's hard to jump in the middle because you don't know what players are great. You don't know who has what record and everything else. But everybody who barely kept along and didn't watch the regular season and didn't know jack shit, they'll all be watching the playoffs.
Everybody's watching the playoffs.
Because guess what? And this is my biggest thing with wrestling always, and Wayne has heard this ad nauseum. It means something.
Yes.
Everything matters.
Matches.
It matters, okay? Everything matters. Every play matters tomorrow. Every score matters tomorrow. It matters. There's no, they could lose this game, but we'll be okay the next 4 weeks.
Exactly.
No, it matters. Just like I love seeing people when they say, like we had the past couple weeks where they're like, we're going to have 3 matches of 2 guys on Raw. They're going to go ahead to a triple threat, and then we're going to decide who faces Drew McIntyre. I was paying attention for all those. Everything mattered. So, now, and by the way, I think the playoffs are going to be friggin' awesome this weekend. I'm psyched for it.
So excited.
But yeah, wrestling's been, I just wish we had a damn audience because they've done a lot of things right. I think there's less to be embarrassed about. I think WWE needs to do some soul searching and say, the old formula always was get to the pay-per-view and then put on the endgame show for the pay-per-view. And obviously have cliffhangers to go on or finish a feud if you're finishing a feud. But you got to get there with compelling writing to get there, whether it's promos, matches with other people, interference with other people, whatever the hell you need to do. And they were masters of this years ago. And now the formula is broken because the result and finale at the pay-per-view every month has been very good to, if not excellent, for most of this year. And everything before that is mostly garbage. I mean, it's just, if I told the two of you that you guys had complete internet power TV outages at your house and were stuck in a cabin in the woods for the last month, would you have missed anything on Raw and SmackDown?
No. And you know
all.
what, Frank? We need to. That's a perfect segue to piggyback off of to get to our Legends Raw review, because this past Monday night, I noticed something different. The athletes were working very hard this week. You had Randy Orton integrated throughout the night, the storyline of talking to each legend and talking down to them. Big Show, Mark Henry, Ric Flair. So they kind of kept you engaged there. We saw some creative stuff with AJ Styles and almost kicking Elias's guitar. I felt like I saw a little effort on Monday night. Hogan opening up with the H phone, which I thought was pretty funny. But then the main event, Drew McIntyre versus Keith Lee. Speaking of 2 athletes that worked very hard on Monday night, we got a decent Raw. I think in terms of 2020, this was a great Raw. It would probably be.
It was probably the best Legends Raw in a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now I'm a little baffled that we didn't see Austin. We didn't see Rock or we didn't see Cena for all. I guess they're all busy. I thought we would have gotten at least Austin. I was a little baffled at that. Only a very slim number of legends that we saw, but I felt like we had a good show.
I still think there's a possibility we could get Cena for the Rumble, if not a WrestleMania match this year. So if that's the case, I wouldn't have thrown him on there. I would just save it for the run WrestleMania surprise.
That's fair.
But
Yeah, I just
right.
think the biggest thing is like Williams trying to say is like outside of Hogan, which I mean Hogan's had his problems. So I mean the next biggest star is Flair. You'd think you'd get it. We saw Austin during the pandemic. We haven't seen Rock in. Man, I don't even know how long it's been since we've seen
Rock since he showed up on the first episode of Fox SmackDown.
Yes, that's right, where he smack talked Corbin.
Yes,
that's right.
The last time we saw The Rock.
Wow. No, I agree with you. I definitely think that there should have been a bigger star. Getting into the new year and everything. You think that there'd be a bigger star, but I thought they did a good job. But like you were saying, I mean, that main event, man,
we had a good show. Like, I haven't talked highly about a Raw since when Paul Heyman got released. Yeah. Every Raw from thereafter has been basically a wet fart every single week, and the role kind of reversed with SmackDown getting better, and now they're killing it.
Well, 3 hours
for the most
is
part.
So painful.
3 hours.
When it's not good, you know what I mean? Like, it's just,
But this week,
it was. Listen, Wayne, it was all right. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to say it was great. I'm not going to say it was bad. It didn't turn me off. It didn't tickle me either.
Yeah.
I think they've done a lot of Legends nights and all of that, and I think it's gotten a little overplayed. And I think, like, did you really see anyone the other night that you haven't seen recently? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, that's my problem with it. Like, I remember the very first time they were like, "Oh, we're going to do like an All-Star Legends Raw." We saw guys that we hadn't seen in forever. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or even when they did what the hell was it a few years ago where we saw Bruce's brother Love for the first time in a while? Like, they had a lot of there.
Or even like the old school Raws where the referees would be dressed up and they changed the ring ropes and it would be the old WWF like New Generation logos and everything.
Listen, it was okay. The main event was phenomenal. They have been doing night-long storylines with Orton for almost a few weeks now, which I've always been a big fan of. Like, if you think about it, like, here we are, we're part of the show. Why are we only entertaining people for 10 minutes and going away like we don't exist until next Monday? You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't work for me. Like, Austin was all over the show. He didn't get his way. He went and busted into somebody's office and beat the shit out of them back there. And if he got screwed at the end of Raw, you bet your ass he was starting Raw sitting
coming next week. Exactly.
Hijack the show if nobody came out there. Okay, and this is stuff that Russo talks about all the time on Twitter, that it doesn't make sense. Just like Moxley losing the title to Omega and completely disappearing after that. That didn't work for me either. It's not like he killed the guy and put him in a body bag. You know what I mean? Like, he could have came out and been pissed off the next week. But just randomly in my mind, can we talk about like the biggest atrocity in wrestling in 2020? In my opinion. If you are a creative writer and work at the WWE, if your job is to book professional wrestling and you get paid on it and you're expected to deliver results in some form of intelligent manner, why did we break up the Iconics to put them into bad tag teams completely different from them still being together?
That doesn't make sense. How do you have a tag team division with 1-2 tag teams?
They were amazing together.
Great. I mean, they're perfect.
They were one of the best acts on the show, okay? They grabbed your attention every single time they were on the show. If you told me we need to break them up because we want to make one of them a superstar, kind of like you did with the Rockers back in the day, I would have said, okay, that's your path. It makes sense. You want to make Peyton Royce, okay? Let's say. You did nothing with them. You broke it up for the sake of breaking it up. Oh, we needed to put them each on a separate show. No, you didn't. It doesn't matter. You did it, okay? And one went and got a random partner, and one went and got a random partner, and you have random tag teams now instead of the two of them being together, which is magic. So who the F got paid to do that? Whose job was it to book that?
Kevin Dunn's.
Dude, that's the bad of the bad, in my opinion, of anybody with a pencil to paper this year. That's my opinion.
No, I 100% agree with you. And I think that's the thing is, even me and Wayne talked about during our Survivor Series pre-show. Look, we get it, man. It's not Raw versus SmackDown. You don't need to keep feeding us that BS. You know,
And
it's a roster. They're all together. You know, they don't care. They're all getting a paycheck. Like, why do you need to split them up and put them on separate shows? Or any tag team, just in general. You know, why did the New Day need to be split up? Unless it leads to Big E actually doing something. I know he's the Intercontinental Champion and all that, but unless it leads to him actually being a main player down the line, you know, what's the point? The New Day's been the hottest thing, you know, since, 2016? I want to say they debuted in 2015, but they turned face in 2016, you know, and they've been popular ever since.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense to me, man.
There's you created 2 teams, 2 rosters of shows, and they don't do anything with it except actually handicap their own booking by having people not able to interact with other people.
Exactly.
You've got somebody on Raw and somebody on SmackDown, and somebody backstage is saying, damn, that would be a great feud. Let's I can't put them together. That's right. They're not on the same show. Oh, let me tell you something. If those 2 shows fought like Republicans and Democrats do, the ratings would be through the roof, okay? That's all I have to say.
Absolutely. There's no need for an internal brand split anymore. You got competition in AEW. You got Impact. You got New Japan. I feel like it insults my intelligence. You can build a tag team division with better with WWE coming together with one brand. WWE has competition now with other companies. You don't need to do an internal brand split. It's just ridiculous.
Exactly, and that's the thing is,
it's hurting the way they book things.
You know,
Especially with tag teams.
One of my favorite Survivor Series was the one when NXT got involved. Bring WWE together and make them go against NXT. I mean, Triple H is building up that roster to be completely different. I mean, you're having Finn Balor's, you know, in there. He's being completely different from what he was in WWE. Why not, you know, have them go against each other and have competition instead of having, Raw and SmackDown's going against each other, but they're all still under the same company and getting this paid, you know, when it all comes down to it. So no, I 100% agree. I think the brand split's been going on since I was a fan, 2002. So
I feel bad for you that you've spent your entire fandom during the creation of the brand split, because the brand split to me was the death of wrestling success, in my opinion. It's just ridiculous. You have these very powerful, narcissistic, selfish wrestlers with these personalities, and all of a sudden in November every year they're so patriotic about what brand there are that they'll wrestle the entire pay-per-view in a blue or red t-shirt and team up with guys that they absolutely hate because SmackDown needs to win. Stop. Like, could you imagine if that went on in like UFC, if they tried to pull that with like guys that absolutely hate each other? Like, it would just never go on. They'd be like, what are we fighting for? Oh, we're all going to win $1 million together as a team?
It's like the Ultimate Fighter. It's like the Ultimate Fighter as a reality show, just put on the regular TV show.
It's just there's no stakes. What's the stakes? There's no stakes to it. If there's no stakes and there's no meaning and there's no tomorrow, 1 minute left on the clock, 50 yards to drive, have to score. If there's none of that, why the F does the viewer care? They're not going to.
Those that have been following our podcast for a couple months know we were not invested into Survivor Series one bit. We weren't having any bit of it. We didn't even do a post show. We didn't do it. We were like,
there was no reason to.
No reason to. There was no initiative. After I watched that pay-per-view, it was like, I got nothing.
It's the only major pay-per-view of 2020 that I did not do a post show.
Yeah. Royal Rumble is going to give us a lot to talk about.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah. But I mean, you talk about, like 2001 Survivor Series. Everybody knew WWE was gonna beat the Invasion.
It was still awesome, though.
But there's that small, just maybe WCW pulls it out. WCW, ECW maybe just pulls it out. And I know you two could speak more to it because you enjoyed it, when it was live and everything. But it's just like, man, there's never been that. Just maybe, somebody can shock the world and it'll change the wrestling culture forever, ever since then, I think.
The problem is that they lost the attitude, and I don't mean that, I mean that in a literal sense. I don't mean that I don't think wrestling needs to be as dirty as it was in the Attitude Era, but it needs the actual attitude of the era. You know what I mean? Like, the Attitude Era was literally named the Attitude Era because Shawn went out there and cut a fucking promo and just went nuts and just said whatever he wanted and was totally out of line compared to, like, you know, we're going to market to Disney viewers the way WWE was in 95. And Vince just, for some reason on that day, watched it and was like, that was attitude. That's what we need for everybody. And you know, yeah, this is great. And if you just, like, it just blows my mind. Like, I saw a GIF of Shawn doing an entrance before, and it was just a spot in the ring where he does the pose, and you know, he's just in there with the dick look on his face, and just, you know, pointing to his crotch, and just he's doing the pose. Then he gets up again, and he's just giving you the look like "F you, I'm the greatest in the goddamn world." And I'm watching this, and I'm just like, who the hell looks like that right now? You know what I mean? Like, nobody. Like, this guy was the biggest, most entertaining dick on television, and it's probably MJF at this point. Which
exactly, MJF, really.
You know what I mean? So it's just so you watch that and you're just so entertained. And Russo was a king of intertwining everybody on the roster to just have something to do. Even if a guy had a 5-minute nothing match on the show, the 30-minute promo backstage where he talked to some diva that he never talked before, and your brain is saying to yourself, ooh, what's going on there? Now all of a sudden it means something. Like,
I mean, Al Snow's wrestling matches against himself, putting himself through tables and stuff.
Right.
I mean, what could you do with that now? I mean, it's
Wayne's heard me say this before. Like, we need to get out of the formula of we're going to shoot in the wrestling ring, we're going to shoot in some GM's office, and we're going to shoot in the Charlie Caruso interview area. Like, that's the whole show now, repeatedly. Like, there's no real life aspect to it. Let's go hear some guy talk shit as he benches some crazy weight during the day, getting ready to you know, as he's working out. Let's go to some guy's house and have another guy jump him there. You know what I mean? Like,
Austin Pillman.
Yes, like,
yes.
Come
great.
on, like, this is real life story. The problem is that they're trying to trick all of our brains to think that these characters just, like, go away and don't live their lives when the camera's not on them for 10 minutes every week. You know what I mean? It's like Toy Story, where, you know, Andy thinks that once he stops playing with the figures, they just go dead and they don't exist anymore. But the truth is that they are all fucking walking around, okay? Like,
where is Triple H and Katie Vick in a funeral parlor, man? We need to see more of that.
Now, Frank, while we got you revved up, this is my favorite with this guy. While we got you revved up, we're gonna start coming in for landing really soon. Your thoughts on Bill Goldberg showing up at the end of the Drew McIntyre Keith Lee match to build to Goldberg versus Drew McIntyre Royal Rumble?
Okay. I have been on record as saying one of the worst things that they've done in recent WWE history was to beat The Fiend with Goldberg in Saudi Arabia. It was horrendous, especially for the run that The Fiend was on at that point, just absolutely being made as a main man in this company with a great entrance, great look, great debut at SummerSlam that year, the
Fantastic.
whole deal. I didn't love the red light matches for sure. I thought that took away from his couple of big matches. I don't know if I would have had him win in Saudi Arabia when he won his first title, but they were doing big events there, so that's what they wanted to do. Goldberg coming in and destroying all that was just so bad. So now you go to Mania, he's supposed to put over Roman. It ends up being Strowman. Nobody will ever care about that match ever again because it's god awful and 2 minutes. And here we are. And this is all I'm going to say. I'm going to remain calm right now because nothing bad has happened yet. Yeah. And I will give all of this a pass if Goldberg does not leave with that title and he does not leave with a Royal Rumble win, because it is very possible for him to lose that match.
And if he shows up in the match after.
So as long as Goldberg does not leave as the men's Royal Rumble winner or the WWE champion, excuse me, because that's what Drew has, the WWE champion, I'm going to say that I don't think it's great booking, but I will live with it. And he put over Drew, and he did not come out with a big win for the night, and that's what big guys like him should do for the younger generation. And I will tolerate it, and I'm okay. And I'm happy they did this here and not at WrestleMania. That's another thing I'm happy about. if he wins either one of those, I promise you that you're going to want me as a guest on your next show because I'm going to
Please.
lose my mind. Okay, it's gonna be bad. Like I need to set up a reaction camera in my house for the live reaction.
Do you
I'm
think?
gonna-
I gotta ask. Do you think that? Because I thought it was stupid with the way that they did this, but now that I think about it, I might see an end game here. Do you think Goldberg just beats the living hell out of McIntyre, but he survives? McIntyre survives just barely, and the Miz cashes in and wins the title and goes to WrestleMania, and they do a triple threat. Miz, McIntyre, and the Royal Rumble winner.
I think Goldberg is such a prima donna that I think if they pitched that to him, he would tell Vince, "I don't want the Miz involved in any of my matches." I'm dead serious. I really believe that. I don't think the briefcase gets involved here. That's my opinion. I just
That's
don't.
fair.
I think at this point, I think Goldberg's going to put him over. I do. That's my opinion.
To play
And
devil's,
I think I'll be happy with the booking because he's not going to win the Rumble either, and we'll see where we go from there. Other people have stated that they think that Goldberg will lose the match, go in the Rumble, win the Rumble, and then challenge Roman at WrestleMania.
Oh, please
the other
no.
no,
Please
I don't
no.
wanna see
And
it.
I'm not going to say that that's not a pretty good possibility right now.
Oh, it is.
And again, at this point, I'm going to predict that Daniel Bryan is winning the Rumble, and I'm very happy about that because that's a guy who should be winning the Rumble and should have that accolade. It's a match that's set up for a performer like him, and I just hope it means something because I just have this sour taste in my mouth from a couple years ago when Rollins won. I feel like it didn't mean anything, even though he won at WrestleMania. Him and Brock didn't even have a very good match. It was very quick to open the show. So just I don't know, for some reason, like I look at that Rumble and I say to myself, that was a fun Rumble to watch. It was a good Rumble, but like I just feel like even the crowd at the end, like Rollins just didn't get that big fandom pop, and nobody's going to get it this year because there's not fans there. But I just think Bryan is more of the darling that will get that.
I've been hearing Brian's name.
Oh
as a
no,
possibility.
man. Oh no.
Do we have breaking news, or did you see a spoiler?
Oh, I just possibly saw a spoiler for
Oh,
the
boy.
Royal Rumble.
What?
I think you're right now. But do you want me to tell you what happened on SmackDown tonight?
Go ahead, because I'm going to watch it anyway. Go ahead.
They ran a number one contenders match for a number one contenders gauntlet match to challenge Roman Reigns at the Royal Rumble.
Okay.
This
Rey
is where I'm gonna
Mysterio.
take my earmuffs off for a second.
Sami Zayn, Shinsuke, Baron Corbin,
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Bryan,
Mm-hmm.
and Adam Pearce. Who do you think won?
Rey Mysterio.
Adam Pearce.
Adam Pearce.
Adam Pearce is facing Roman. at the
Roman
Rumble.
Reigns at the Royal Rumble.
Like, what are they doing?
Well,
Oh,
listen. In all fairness, there really isn't many challengers other than like Daniel Bryan for that title right now.
I mean, maybe it could
Wait,
be
no.
it could be an Uso match. Maybe. I mean, I know he's had some work on the Indies, and I know he's good in that sense. But like Nigel McGuinness had work on the Indies before he had to retire, and now he's a commentator. But
You could have finished the Owens feud with Reigns at the Rumble. And just done a
Absolutely.
different
Exactly.
situation, you know what I mean, it would have made a lot more sense. Like, I think they took it to the limits last month with the TLC, but at the same time, like, I'm still going to pick that option over Adam Pearce. You know what I mean? Like,
I will tell you that I read
Roman Reigns
Bleacher
are lacking
Report.
challengers though.
Yeah, I read Bleacher
very-
Report, and this got graded an A. This match got graded an A.
Wow.
So I wonder if that is
listen, there is a problem with baby faces to challenge Roman on SmackDown. There's no question about that. I mean,
I'm intrigued. Let's just
but
say
this
that is
you know,
the
this
best
just
way to
goes-
put it.
This just goes to show you how you actually handicap your own booking by having two different shows and splitting everybody apart.
Absolutely.
Because you could have had Matt Riddle win a friggin' qualifier and face Roman and put on a great match and have Roman beat him, and you would have been fine.
Yeah. I think we lost a little bit of internet connection here. There you are.
There I am. I have returned.
Yeah, so I mean, devil's advocate, really quick, before we move on. Goldberg, he did some good stuff with Brock Lesnar with beautiful car crashes. We'll see what we get out of that. He does not need to be put over for any titles at this point. Done. Yeah, and Roman Reigns is lacking a little bit of challenges right now. We noticed. Living Gimmick also talked about it too. Frank, you're right. I would have. They could have probably gotten a little bit more mileage out of Kevin Owens for sure into the main event for the Royal Rumble for sure.
Yeah.
Adam Pearce.
Listen, the Rumble was typically years ago a time when, certain mid-carders who they thought could maybe be main eventers got shots at people just to fill some of the world title matches. I mean, we got a Rey Mysterio versus Undertaker title match at the Rumble. You know what I mean? We got a hardcore Holly versus
Brock Lesnar. Didn't Umaga challenge Cena at one point, if I remember correctly?
Which is one of the best.
Great match.
Cena fight. Yeah. So, it's a time
where we had Triple H and Steiner.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which was horrible.
Papa Pump.
Worst match I saw ever in person.
Look at the two that you got at 2008 that I was live for. You got Jeff Hardy versus Orton, and you got Rey Mysterio versus Edge. I mean, these are the types of matches you always got matches with great workers, guys that didn't usually get a shot to go to the big time because basically the Rumble was the real main event.
Exactly.
You were getting like that mid-card title match kind of spot, and people were getting time to actually go out there and prove, I can hang with the big guys. I can be in your title match. And, they wouldn't get the shot that WrestleMania, but they would maybe move on after that in SummerSlam, or that could look a lot better. But, this was an opportunity to give somebody a rub. I don't think Adam Pearce is it.
Hey, man, maybe he shows out and he's, he gets rewarded for his time as a sort of an authority figure, and he, becomes a semi-main roster member, and, he's just somebody you have enjoyable matches with. I don't know. I'm intrigued now that the more we talk about it.
Listen, you got the family thing going on with Roman and them. I would have wrote something the past couple of weeks to somehow get the Mysterio family involved and get Dominic a title match with Roman at Rumble. How's that, bro?
I would have preferred that. I didn't even think of that.
No question. You could have made the kid. He could have hung with Roman decently, put on a good match. Roman beats him, moves on. Nobody thinks he has a shot, but he actually looks like he has a shot for a split second. And the kid's made. I mean, I think, and you know what? I hope he has a great run in the Rumble this year. That would be great for him.
Right. See, that's the problem. WWE has a big problem making new stars, which has been
huge.
This is why they have to keep going to the well with Goldberg and Hogan and bringing back the legends, because they don't know how to make the new stars.
I mean, they're really the biggest new star that's not in the Shield. I mean, Punk. I mean, 2011. I mean, that was outside of the three guys from the Shield. I mean, has there really been a new star that's been made?
Owens.
That's true. That's fair.
Owens was, he was Universal Champion. You know what I mean? He has held Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt, the Fiend to me is a bona fide star. He's had the title. He's had both titles. I mean, the man walked into WrestleMania with the championship. You know what I mean?
True.
So you got to say that. They have a major problem making stars. Yeah. And I feel like sometimes they have something really good going, and then they put the brakes to it and kind of screw people.
Retribution.
How about Rhea Ripley after WrestleMania?
Yes.
She's coming up on the main roster.
I know, but what was the fart in between then and now? You know what I mean? What the hell was that?
Yeah.
Booking. She wasn't on camera for about a month, so that she lost steam after that.
I mean, it's like
travel, and then from there, it is just lazy booking, and they shifted their focus to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, you think about even Kofi. I mean, Kofi had a fantastic run. Reminiscent to Daniel Bryan. I mean, the fans were all behind him. He goes and even beats Bryan at WrestleMania. And then the first SmackDown on Fox, I mean,
oh my God,
it's a wet fart. I mean, he just gets absolutely one move, and he gets beat by the F5, and that's it.
And they don't understand what they do when they do stuff like that, because then your mind says to you, well, Kofi just beat Orton for 2 months straight, and Kofi got beat in 3 seconds. So how does that make Randy Orton look? You know what I mean? They just don't get stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, Lesnar should kill him. You know what I mean? But at the same time, let him get moves in for 60 seconds and then get killed. You know what I mean? Give him a fighting chance.
And then they had Cain Velasquez come out, and he didn't do anything.
What's the what's the grub for the weekend for the crew here for NFL football? What's the food? Talk to me.
Oh man, well, I'll be quarantining for the weekend, so
Can't go anywhere.
Yeah, I'll be quarantining for the weekend. So, I guess whatever I feel like door dashing.
There you go.
Probably gonna make some barbecue weenies, man. It's
great taco places on Long Island for sure.
Ooh.
Not on my end.
Oh,
don't tell my wife that, man. She's gonna move to your house.
You guys got to come out to the East End. I'm telling you, you got Swell Taco with 2 locations in Huntington and Patchogue. Patchogue is probably a little bit more vibrant. A couple places, Lucha Libres or something, even further east.
You ever been to Zimzari in Massapequa by any chance?
No.
One of my favorites.
Wow.
Tuesday night, Taco Tuesdays, they do a filet mignon and shrimp surf and turf taco.
Ooh,
with fried onions on top with a chipotle barbecue sauce.
Oh,
You've never had a taco
good.
like this in your life.
That sounds good. I'll have to come visit.
Yep.
Wow.
But I think this week I'm gonna do a little homemade wings, and I bought the Wayne knows about this. I hope you got Boar's Head where you are. I bought the best little mini Boar's Head hot dogs, and I'm gonna make my own little crescent rolls for them. Little pigs in a blanket action. Like, we gotta get football food going.
Exactly. You know, I'm not a Colts fan, but my family takes Indianapolis Colts playoff football very seriously. So I'm sure there'll be.
You gotta watch somebody this weekend.
Exactly.
Man. Both of our teams are out. Like
my team's out. My little brother's a Buccaneers fan.
The New York team, Buffalo Bills.
Yep. My little brother's a Buccaneers fan. It's the first time he's ever seen his team in the playoffs, so he's freaking out. So I'm sure there'll be some good food here.
What's the picks? What do you guys think?
I think I may have Cleveland pulling through this week, just for 1 week against the Steelers. I think I got that.
You're not concerned about the COVID spread and the coaching issues and everything we've heard?
I like their backs against the wall, though, man.
It might fire them up a little more.
Yeah, I like the backs against the wall.
For first time in the playoffs in 18 years. I think who do we got? We got Tennessee against Baltimore.
I love
Tennessee takes. Yeah, I think Tennessee.
I opened up the paper today and I saw Tennessee plus 3.5, and I said that is the sexiest pick.
Great bet. That's a great bet.
Even if they lose, to stay within a field goal and still win the bet.
Yeah,
I immediately put money on that, and I said I may put money straight up a couple of days later, but I said let me lock in that 3.5 right now. And the other spreads are a little harder. You know what I mean? Brady's got a nice 8-point spread over Washington, which I think Washington's D-line could really mess with.
I think they're going to keep it close.
Washington's going to put up a fight.
Washington's got a solid defense.
Yep. And I think New Orleans is favored by 10 over the Bears. I do expect – I think they're saying this is Breeze last year, so I expect them to win. The Bears, to me, man, they're like that team. I'm sure you guys have one also, that people can hype them up and talk about them every year that they're supposed to be good, and you're just like, nope, I'm not buying it. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I feel about the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest gripe with, we were talking about Tennessee. I like Lamar Jackson. I understand his talent. I know he's an MVP, but he does not show up in the big games. His stats in playoff games and primetime games have been putrid at the best. I think if Tennessee makes him throw the football, Tennessee walks away with that game. I think another game, depending on whether Goff plays or not, I think the Rams upset the Seahawks. I think that's a good game tomorrow, at 4 o'clock. I think the Rams got a good win against Arizona this past week with John Wolford.
The last game they played against each other, that was the first time Seattle beat them in, I think, 6 meetings.
Yeah.
And it was still very close. They always play a close game. And that's another, I think, 3-point spread or so. And I said to myself, I'm not even touching that one because that's coming down to it.
Yeah, exactly. That game that's going to be really close.
Yes, I agree.
I got a bold prediction here. I'm calling Kansas City in the Super Bowl against.
That's bold.
Well, okay. So the bold prediction: if there's one team that beats KC, it'll be the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, that's my Super Bowl. Is
on the NFC
Green
side,
Bay and
I
Buffalo.
think we're looking at on the NFC side, we're looking at Green Bay or the Saints.
I like a Green Bay Buffalo Super Bowl. I think that's going to be a really good one, and that would be a hell of a game, man.
Interesting.
Let me see Rodgers and Josh Allen go at it. I mean, I love Rodgers. I think he's the greatest quarterback to ever play, but Man, that would be a fun Super Bowl.
There's a lot of good games for a first round. There's a lot of good games this year.
Yeah,
You can't say that every year,
throwing
but
me
there's
off
some
with
good
the
games.
extra two.
the extra
Yeah.
two, exactly. Yeah,
It's really like I got to tell
like
you, as someone who gambles a little bit, my best weeks every year are wild card weekend. Like I
Exactly.
do 4 bets and then I'll do a 14 parlay. And 2 years
Yep,
ago,
there you
when
go.
Chicago missed the kick at the end of the night on the fourth game, I won a couple $100 just because I had the parlay going the whole week. I was screaming when they missed that kick.
I'm right there
this-
with you, man. I know
This
exactly
is
what you're talking
usually
about.
like my weekend, and I'm like, damn, there's freaking 6 games now. Like now I don't know what to do. So, but,
6-game parlay.
yeah. Oh God.
Take the Rams and take the Browns. I like the Browns with their backs against the wall.
I got to tell you, I'm staying away from the Rams Seahawks game. That's my stay away from game. I can't touch that.
Yeah, that's a tough one
The
to call.
Titans. I'm in love with. I might eat my words on that, but that's my sexy pick. I really
Denver Conry's been tearing it out all year, tearing it up all year long.
Oh yeah,
Best running back of the league besides from
and
Kamara.
they're gonna be fired up because that game with the Texans last week was way too close, and they're gonna know that they had some mistakes and they'll fix them. But
And I mean, even
Lamar's
in their-
got a monkey on his back, so we
Yeah,
might get him coming out. So
He does, but even in their earlier matchup, I mean, you saw John Harbaugh get into it with a few Titans players this year. So
yep.
yeah, I really like Tennessee.
So do I.
Again, I don't discredit Lamar Jackson's play. I don't think
No.
that he's bad in any aspect. But until he proves me wrong, he
Yeah.
just hasn't shown up in big games, and I think
just think
Tennessee can
Tennessee
beat
got a
that
little
game.
bit more put together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And Tennessee, I mean, they won earlier this year. I mean, it wasn't an overtime, Derrick Henry touchdown run in overtime, but they beat them in the playoffs last year.
Yep.
I really like Tennessee in this game, especially at 3.5-point underdogs.
Well, gentlemen, we have a lot of content this month between the football, the Royal Rumble, NXT Takeover, the week after that. So it's we got a lot of content. It's going to be very exciting Royal Rumble season going into WrestleMania. I don't even know how I'm going to find the time to watch all this stuff, but
Yeah. Try
Frank,
adding a 2-year-old to the mix running around the house. We'll see how it is.
Tommy, Frank, thank you guys so much for hopping on. Frank, thank you so much for being our guest.
Yeah, thanks, man. We
Really,
appreciate it.
Appreciate you hopping on and give us the time tonight. We really appreciate that.
I feel kind of like resurrected. It's like a weird feeling, It's like a retired player coming back for an old timers game and feeling that kick again.
You're Peyton, man, just like my Broncos. You're just like Peyton.
I'll take that all day. I'll take that. Listen, it was nothing but a pleasure. I love exchanging with you guys. That was a lot of fun, and I'd love to come back on. We'll do it again for sure, and hopefully we'll be able to move past where the world is with the awful pandemic and everything, and get back to that word normal. A lot of people don't know if we're going back there, but I'd love to see it, and we definitely need the people in the crowd, fans. I think 2020 was the year that it was proved more than ever that the fans of professional wrestling make professional wrestling.
Oh,
They make the experience, man.
Yep.
Absolutely.
There'll never be a time that I don't forget my first wrestling show. I mean, I just went, last year, 2019, on the road to WrestleMania 35, but it's just different, man. It's totally different to have fans in the crowd.
Oh, absolutely. For those of you guys that are watching for the Deep Six Pro Wrestling Podcast, please give us a follow on YouTube, subscribe. We're available on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. We'll be coming back to you guys next week with a watch along for the Royal Rumble of your choice. So make sure you get onto our Twitter account at Deep Six W, and we'll be available to choose whatever you guys vote on and do a watch along for you. So make sure you guys do that. And Frank, thank you again for coming on. Tommy, till next week, you guys have an awesome night.